I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, the Arakwal people of the Bundjalung Nation, and pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. Are you ready to win at the game of life? Well, throw out that rulebook and get down to the business of being the best and most authentic version of you. Welcome to the Human Design Podcast. We're changing the rules around success, abundance, purpose, love, and life, where we're creating a planet where everyone can thrive in a world that loves and supports each other. I'm your host, Emma Dunwoody, a qualified master coach, human design expert, podcaster, and entrepreneur that is living the life of my dreams, breaking all the rules while doing it, making a huge impact, and living my design and manifesting miracles on the daily. Join me as I break down and simplify everything you need to live in alignment with your human design, teach you how to recondition your unconscious mind for greatness, and to take back your power so you can manifest your heaven on earth and serve the rest of the planet at the same time. It's time to give up the fear and step into your highest potential, to reach for the stars, to know and live your greatness. It's what you deserve, and it's what the planet really needs from you. So buckle up and enjoy the ride.
Before you start listening to this amazing transits episode, I want you to stop everything that you're doing and listen to this. And if you're wondering where that familiar Aussie accent is and you're wondering if you're on the wrong podcast, don't worry, you're in the right place. You're talking to Taylor. Hey, how you doing? And I asked Emma if I could come on and share this with you guys. And if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you've absolutely heard us talk about this. And it's something that I'm super passionate about in our business. And so I wanted to come share it with you. So if you use human design in your business in any way, if you're a coach or you want to use human design in your business, you have to hear this because it's responsible for so much of the growth that we've had this year, and I just can't keep my mouth shut about it anymore. So you've heard us probably talk about this body graph chart software that we use, and it's responsible for bringing more than 15,000 new leads into our business this year alone. Why does this matter for you? Well, if you use or plan to use human design in your business in any way, what you're going to find is that you're sending people to another major website or somebody else's platform for them to get their chart, when instead it could all be happening right in your own business. With the Body Graph Chart software, not only can you host your own chart software on your website so that you don't have to send people away, but you can also add them to your email list. You can follow up with human design information or any other information that's relevant to your business. You can build reading report tools where you can put your own information in to guide them through their journey in a way that is branded and unique to you. This is one of the most brilliant ways to build your own customer journey and to connect with people and to build your business and to create transformation for your clients and anyone that enters your business. We are obsessed, as you can probably hear in my voice, with this software. Like I said, it's brought over 15,000 new amazing people into our community just this year alone. And I don't know what we would do without it, to be honest. So I wanted to come on here and tell you about it so that if you want to try this tool, which I highly recommend that you do, I want to share with you a way that you can get 50% off for 12 months because these guys are amazing. Their customer support is amazing. And if the word software is already scaring you because you're not tech savvy and you don't know anything about websites or how to do these sorts of things, I want you to take a deep breath and don't worry because it's the easiest thing in the world to use. And like I said, their customer service is incredible. With just a couple clicks, you can have this thing up and running on your website in no time. So don't let the tech scare you away. It's really, really easy and it's so worth it. So if you want to try this out in your business, all you have to do is go to bodygraphchart.com. I'll put the link in the show notes and you can get 50% off for 12 months. I know, really generous of them. 50% off for 12 months if you use the code Human Design Podcast, all lowercase, all together, Human Design Podcast. You guys, try it. Okay, I'll leave you alone for the transits now. And if you have any questions about this, just reach out and ask us.
Hey everyone, and welcome to today's episode. Well, it's that time of the month again. It's transits time, and it's getting really, really freaking close to the end of the year, and we've got so much to share with you. So welcome, Jenny.
Hey Emma, hey everyone. Yeah, December. I don't know. I feel like this happened faster than I was expecting.
Yeah, I know. Where did the year go? Having said that, Taylor and I were reflecting a couple of weeks ago on everything we've done this year, and it's like, oh my God, it's just been such an epic year. Um, and at the same time, it just feels like it's gone forever and flashed by. It's weird. I feel like I'm living in
Hmm.
the twilight zone. But hey, it's predominantly mostly good with some
Yeah,
significant struggles. But hey, whatever, that's being human, right?
yeah, yeah. Right. I mean, yeah. I feel ready for it. Like I agree with you. If I reflect back, I can feel how much has changed and happened and gone on this year. Um, I just, I think every time the first mention of Christmas comes around, I'm like, well, already what? So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, before we get to Christmas, let's talk about the transits. Obviously,
mm.
we're going to focus on December, but let's talk about what happened in November. Do you want to give us a bit of a review?
I mean, personally, I still early in December, I was still kind of watching the October into early November splenic transit that the sun transits all the spleen gates. And I mentioned on the last podcast that from the first day, the day the sun went into the gate 18, I got a chesty cough and it continued through the whole month. So I was like watching to see if when it stopped. And it literally on the same day that the sun moved out of the spleen gates and went into gate one, suddenly I don't have a chesty cough anymore. So for me, that was pretty entertaining. Yeah, pretty fascinating.
I love that. I love that. Like, part of me just wants to spend a bit more time with the transits next year, like being able to actually track the things, especially, for me, there's been some really big things going on. So I would just love to see what's happening in the
Mm.
skies.
Yeah, we need to figure out a way to make it really accessible because it is like a full-time job. I think if you do it really seriously, we'll figure something out though. I agree with you. I feel like I want to do more of a structured um, way of reflecting on it. I do it to a degree, but like I think there is so much more information and observation that like deeper levels that I think are potentially there. So yeah, I agree with you on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think when
Mm.
I reflect on November as a whole, I feel like the theme for me that I personally felt and that I've seen coming up with other people was just this. It's almost like a solidifying, clarifying, quantifying month where there was just this real sense of I there was for me there was in November there was no particular bells and whistles, no particular big aha moments, just this deepening clarification of what I've already kind of realized and a renewed commitment to it or a renewed resolve or determination with it. That's kind of how it felt. There's just felt this like, we closed off the quarter of duality. We begin the quarter of mutation. So we've gone from this focus on our relationships to the focus being on change and mutation and an empowered creative process of healing. And that's, yeah, I think just that general theme is what I can feel is my feeling of what November has been like for me anyway.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I feel like for me, it wasn't quite so subtle. But definitely that deepening of, um, like knowing the decisions that have been made or the changes and the shifts, whether it's in the business or other areas of my life, like feeling a real sense of, yep, this is correct. Um, and I think in many cases, making big shifts, like I know that there's definitely been things that, I've had to have big conversations or challenging conversations or make changes that necessarily don't feel, um, like they feel correct, but they're also a bit like bittersweet. So, yeah, I think November's been quite a month.
Yeah, I think there was another thing that, I was on a silent retreat in the early part of the month and something that, again, I've seen before many, many times on retreat, but it stayed with me since then. Like I've come out of this retreat and I haven't lost this connection to this, which is the essence of what the purpose of the meditative practice, one of them anyway, it's to have access to this deep part of us that is at peace, that is non-judgmental, that it is infinitely compassionate and profoundly loving, and really neutral. It's got a really neutral flavor, you know, this real just good, this really good aspect that's really deep inside our hearts. And I almost always get access to it in a really profound way when I'm on retreat, but then it kind of gets smothered as I come back out. But this time it's still there. I can taste it. And it's like all the wounded parts of me, I know that I can just bathe them in this like sweet balm of, I mean, they call it Buddha nature in the Buddhist teachings, but this goodness that's in me. And it just feels so good to have this consistent access to it. And then I can understand why people who practice this become kind of evangelical about it, because they want everyone to know and have access to this part of themselves, because it's not, you know, unique to me. It's everyone has this deep goodness in them. So that's another thing that's been really like a thread through the month for me.
Oh, I love that. That is so good. It reminds me of, 20 years ago when I started this journey with my mental health and just feeling like I just want to be happy. And then, had that profound moment that I had. And I think it was like 5 years later or something, like it was a significant time later, where I was walking down the street and it dawned on me that I was happy. And I was like, oh my God. And from that time in my life, I've always felt that there's that underlying almost gratitude for the happiness. And, I kind of feel like happiness is always there. And maybe it's what you call the goodness, like it's always there. And it doesn't actually matter what's going on in life. Like you can access it all the time. So, yeah, I love that. I really resonate with that too.
I think there was also this part of me that didn't really, I think it just didn't know that it was allowed. That I was allowed to love myself completely. I was allowed to forgive myself every single one of my perceived fallibilities, and also to do the same for everyone else. Like I think part of me just didn't know that that was an option. There's some part of me that thought, oh, we're supposed to, judge ourselves or, all that stuff. And actually, I've concluded that what I thought was, oh, I'll never improve unless I judge myself, is kind of not the healing that I need or that we need. I speak for myself, but I think it's kind of a universal feeling that the healing that we need is this deep, deep loving and forgiving. And because I've realized that that's A, an option, and then B, I can actually access it. I think I agree with you about happiness, but for me, it's not like, it doesn't feel like an elated feeling or a joyful feeling. It just feels like this unbelievably deep sense of peace inside me, because I'm like, I can love and forgive myself or anyone else. Anything is how I feel. I mean,
yeah,
I'm sure life will test that, but.
Well, I think that's the whole point, whatever we call it. I think that really is the whole point, that what I'm always banging on about, like our journey, the most important thing we have to do is love, trust, and accept ourselves. And within that is understanding that we are imperfect and that we are human, and that is totally lovable. That is, no matter what life throws at you, it is not an example of where you failed. It's just an example of life, and, the choice in which you have to face it, like how you want to face it. And I know for me that one thing I learned all those years ago was, I'm doing the best I can in every moment. I really am. And I'm throwing my heart at it. And when we live a life like that, then even the hard stuff is much easier to move through, because we're not battling ourselves. We're on our own team. We're our best friend. And although that also for me is imperfect, like there's definitely times that I momentarily turn on myself, but it's definitely become a habit of predominantly being on my own team. And I really think that's the key to life, love, trust, and accepting yourself, because as within, so without, and when we can do that for ourselves and in our internal world, then we can only manifest that love out into the world. So yeah, I think it's super important.
Yeah, Yeah, that being what you said about being on your own team, I call it being my own best friend. Like it doesn't actually matter how anyone else interacts with me, because I'm my own I'm here with me. We're in good relationship, me and me, whichever aspect of me that is. But yeah, and nothing else really matters if that's in place.
Exactly. And, it almost goes to that next step. I have a bit of a giggle because it comes down to that. And really, like, are you a part of my illusion, or am I a part of your illusion? Because really nothing else matters, because it's only me that's here, or is it only you that's here? So yeah, like, it's the only job we have. And if we just invest in that, then we can only manifest good in the world, because you know, we give to others what we have for ourselves. So yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Mm.
So
So let's
with that,
dive.
yeah,
Yeah.
that December. On that thread, my theme for December is to look at everything through the light of the cities, and the frequencies of light, that we can cultivate. I think we can lean into these frequencies. Anyone that's worked with you knows that we do that. We hold the shadow. We can be with the shadow. We're not afraid of the shadow, but we're also looking at the light that we're cultivating. So that's my theme for the month.
I love that. And you know what? I'm just going to chuck in the reminder for everybody out there listening, because I think sometimes we spend way too much time on the shadow. One of the things that I loved when I first came to Richard Rudd's work and the Gene Keys was the fact that he said we need to be focusing 80% on the gift and the Siddhic state. Like, remember this, people. That's what we need to focus on. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And, we don't have to be in that Siddhic expression all the time. But all we need to do is notice it when it shows up, and just, give our brain evidence, show our heart that, yes, this is within us, and focus more on these, as you say, the areas where the light gets in, the gift and the Siddhic state, and trust that when we do that, whatever we need to heal through the shadow, because we must go through the shadow, will show itself for healing. And then we can continue to focus on these higher expressions and potentials that lie within us.
Yeah. So let's end the year like that, shall we?
Sounds good.
All right. So I'm going to walk through the sun and earth polarities. When we look at the mandala, wherever the sun is, the earth is always directly opposite on the mandala, on the exact other side of the wheel. And they're called, in the Gene Keys, programming partners. So they have this tension between them. They often feel quite opposite or balancing as energies. So, but then when what we're looking at, my theme for the month is to look at them through the highest expression, this Siddhic state. And from that perspective, they're not polarities. They're all just facets of the same diamond. It's just you're looking at the light through a different lens, but it's actually all the same thing. So you don't get that sense really of the polarity so much when you look at it from the Siddhic expression. So those of you who have a journal and take notes and put dates in, I'll keep giving the dates all the way through. So we start the month, in fact, from the 28th of November through to the 3rd of December, we'll have the sun in gate 9 and the earth in gate 16. These are the siddhis of invincibility and mastery, respectively. Emma will probably have something to say about them because they're part of her incarnation cross.
I know, right? As soon as I hear them, I'm like, my friends.
Yeah. So the gifts that unlock these siddhis are the gifts of determination and enthusiasm. And so in order to escape the pull of the field of inertia, we have to become determined and enthusiastic so that we can keep taking the next step in the direction that's going to intentionally lead us in the direction of whatever it is that we're heading in the direction of, our dream or our vision or our sense of purpose. This sense of just be determined, keep going, step by step, forward step, maybe a few backward steps, but always in the right direction. And what happens eventually, as with all of the Siddhic states, is this merging of self and other and the loss of the sense of boundary. quoting from Richard Rudd, when that happens, the only force in the entire universe that is truly invincible, City of Invincibility, is love. It's impossible to fight against such a force, since it renders all the other energies defunct by returning them to their source. Mastery is a similar thing, you know, there's only one energy that you truly here to master, and that is the capacity to know love. So I wondered if you wanted to say anything about those siddhis and how you see them show up in your life.
Well, you know, like even just hearing the words, you know, invincibility and, or sorry, master, invincibility and mastery, and even determination. I feel like they're just words that lead me. You know, that they're for me. I can see so much of the work I put out in the world. Like, what am I always banging on about? Just take imperfect action in the direction of your dreams. Like, there's my 9 right there. She's always working through me. And this enthusiasm, the enthusiasm that drives me every day. And it's something that over the years I have put under, you know, I remember the first time I walked the Camino in 2018. I had this really profound awareness on the first, you know, somewhere in the first sort of 4 days, that my enthusiasm for life was really uncomfortable for people. You know, it actually made people uncomfortable. And at home, I would shut it down. Out on the Camino, everyone was fine that I was like pumped about the freaking birds singing, or, you know, finding the positive spin on everything or whatever it was. But it just made me realize that I'd really kept a lid on it back at home. So for me personally, I think that these energies are so incredibly powerful. I also feel, you know, I'm always talking about my greatness, and I want to help other people access their greatness. And I love the word greatness because it's more than success. It's more than potential, because for me, greatness is all of those things together. And it's that heart, it's that humanness, it's that being able to master who I am in my imperfections. And I just love it. I feel like these two energies are so profoundly fundamental for who I am. And I've definitely wrestled with the shadow of both of them extensively. And for these energies right now, like, focus on the big dream. Even if you don't know exactly what that is, find the pieces that you do know and feel into those pieces. And then, you know, that's the 9. And then the 16, what I would say the 16 has taught me to do is to consistently turn up for myself, even when I don't want to, even when my ego can convince me it's out of alignment, when really it's out of my comfort zone. You know, so many of the principles of the work that I've created come from these two gates, or these two gene keys. And really, it's about focusing on the big dream, continuing to turn up for yourself, and really being your own greatest champion.
Yeah, I mean, if we just reflect on the Chinese I Ching name of the Gate 9, which is the taming power of the small. I think when I first came to human design, that was one of the ones that I found it hardest to get my head around. And I get it now. Like, it's the small details, the little, every single tiny action is what is the essence of the power of that gate. It's like, it tames all of every energy into this one moment of taking an action, which is all life is anyway. It's one moment of taking an action. And so the taming power of the small is what gets you to the big dream. That's what makes the difference to the whole. And everything we do, every thought we think, every word we say, every action we take affects the whole. We can't pretend that we're not interdependent.
Exactly. And it's the difference between those small actions keeping you in a loop. And, you know, this is the thing that really spoke to me, like the small actions, when you're stuck in the actions that are from fear, from the mind, then you stay in this loop and you go round and round and round, stuck in the small things, going nowhere. And what the 9 really teaches us is exactly like you said, is that it's the small things that head, you know, take the imperfect action in the direction of your dreams. Because as long as you're heading in that direction, everything is going towards the dreams. I remember thinking, I had this real awareness of like, wow, whenever I'm in the supermarket, buying food, like even this, as long as I have my dream in my heart, even being in the supermarket buying milk is heading in that direction. So I think that that's the piece. Like, are you stuck in the loop? Are you going round and round and not breaking the pattern? Or are you connected to your big dream? Do you check in with your big dream on the regular? That's another lesson that it really taught me, is like checking in on the regular so that I am aware of the small things.
Yeah, I had a conversation yesterday with a friend about this. She has this pattern of, someone affects her in a negative way, and she immediately takes it upon herself to do all the work internally instead of speaking out and telling that person how their behavior affected her. And so we're having exactly this conversation about, it's a small act in the grand scheme of things for her to tell that person how their behavior made her feel. But in the big scheme of things, it breaks her pattern and it makes it more available to everyone to be able to speak out against the person that has hurt them and to communicate, hey, when you did that thing, that hurt me. So that's, again, for me, is the power of the taming power of the small. It's like one small action on her behalf actually affects the quantum, because it makes it a little bit more easy for everyone to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really, I think so often in life we think that the small things don't matter, that, oh, we can just let it go, or what we have to say doesn't matter, or the small action that we took doesn't matter. And it's the absolute opposite. Like every little thing matters. And it's like any class that I teach or anything that I run, I'm always like, just ask the question, just put it in the Telegram group. Just, if you don't like something or you're struggling or you've got a question, just do it, because it's not just serving you, it's serving the group, the whole. You'll see all these other people that are like, oh, thank God someone else mentioned that. So yeah, I think we also need to understand this power. Yeah, the power of that sits in the small things, in the small actions.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this podcast as it's just gone out at early December or late November, this is the energy we're in. So as we start December, this is what we're being asked to clarify. What is your goal, vision, dream? Where are you headed? And make sure that whatever it is that you want to see more of in the world is embodied in every single action you take.
Yeah. And follow it up with the enthusiasm. Like, don't be afraid. I think this is the piece for me that I really learned, is that I held back on my enthusiasm. I really just shut it down because I could see that it would make other people uncomfortable. Don't, take those important small actions and back it up with your enthusiasm. Even like, I used to criticize myself so much for my positive attitude. I used to be like, oh, you're just so Pollyanna, Emma, you need to like put a lid on that, you need to get realistic, you need to this, you need to that, that's just imaginary thinking. And all of it was bullshit. That was all bullshit. My natural enthusiasm was the energy I needed to determinedly head in the direction of my goals. So that would be the other thing I would say, is that back up these small things. Once you have the goal, once you have the focus, once you realize that pattern you're staying trapped in, that the small actions that aren't serving you, and you need to break that pattern, just back it up with your natural enthusiasm, back it up with the energy that's within you, and don't worry about what other people think or what you perceive other people think, because they're probably not thinking about you. They're just thinking about themselves. So yeah, that would be the other thing I would add.
Yeah. So from the 4th to the 8th of December, the sun then moves into gate 5 and the earth in gate 35. These are both sacral gates, you'll probably notice, the sun gates. So the cities are the cities of timelessness and boundlessness, arrived at through the gifts of patience and adventure. So these do feel quite opposite, patience and adventure does feel quite opposite, but it doesn't take much insight to see what they're pointing out. It's the patience to stay present to the adventure that's already taken place in the moment, is my interpretation of this. From here, from this place of patiently seeing that life is already an adventure and it's happening through you right now, then you get to these timeless, boundless states, because the idea of time and space collapses and we understand that what is being experienced moment to moment is the thing. And at its root, what is being experienced is this vast, boundless, timeless field of love. That is the reason why everything is so unbelievably beautiful when you engage looking at nature. Like, I don't know, the way that the frost makes a beautiful pattern on the car in the morning, or the way that the raindrops have got a symphony going on in the puddle, or the light on the water, like whatever it is, there is some extraordinary sense of timeless, boundless love and beauty in the natural world when you are patient enough to see what's going on, you know?
The other thing that comes up for me is to, like, be patient with the adventure. I think so often we're in such a hurry. We're like, oh, the adventure, whatever that is, it's not happening. It's not manifesting. It's not showing up in the world. But actually, it really is. And it's the patience to allow the adventure to unfold. Because so often, I know for me, so often I've thought whatever that adventure is, whether it's the business, whether it's a launch, whether it's, with my horse, whether it's whatever it is, right? I'm fixed on what I think that manifestation has to look like. But when you're patient with the adventure, then the beauty of whatever that thing is actually shows itself. And you're like, oh, right. My mind was so attached to it being this way. And it's not turning up, where really sometimes it was there all along. Sometimes, I just had to be patient with whatever it had to show me. So I really think that as well, we want to be patient with the adventure of life, because so often what's the saying? We underestimate what we can do in a year. So we overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in 3. So often we're stuck in this place of, why isn't it here yet? Why isn't it here yet? Why isn't it here yet? Without actually paying attention to how far we've already come. And I think that's a lot of what this patience and adventure. And again, that goes to that timelessness, right? That actually everything is really happening in divine timing and right now, all at once. And who's to say that it's not happening, or it should have already happened, or all of those things. So yeah, I would also just look at it through that frame. Be patient with the adventure, whatever it is, because it's unfolding, and it may have already unfolded. It's just not unfolded the way your mind was attached to it being.
Yeah. I mean, that's what, I spent a lot of time being very still and very quiet and very patient, obviously. And whenever I get to that point where all of that restless energy in my body has stopped being restless, thinking that whatever it is I think I'm seeking is not here, and I just pay attention to what's here, it's here. Whatever I thought I was waiting for or looking for, it was already there.
Yeah. And I feel like that's the whole purpose of all of these little daily rituals, why we meditate, why we journal, why we do gratitude, and why they're so profoundly powerful, because they bring us back into this real deep awareness of the truth of what's going on, that we so often miss, because, our brains can't handle all the information. And if we're so attached to the way something needs to be, we miss what is actually there.
Yes, we do. So the following week, 9th to the 14th of December, we have the Sun in gate 26 and the Earth in gate 45. So these are the siddhis of invisibility and ecstasy. So again, incredible words to consider. Hang on, let me just, for some reason I haven't noted down the gifts. Let me check. Artfulness and delight. So my feeling when I was feeling into these siddhis, invisibility and ecstasy, what I was, the underlying theme of all of these siddhis is this loving awareness that is basically the diamond at the center of our being. And something that I noticed on my retreat this time was this deep warmth around the area of my heart. And if I just sat and just felt the warmth of my heart for long enough, it started to flower and open. And one of the natural mechanisms of being a human is the shutting down of the nerve plexus around the heart, because we get hurt and we decide we don't want to get hurt anymore. And so the unconscious mind kind of shuts down the capacity of these nerves around the heart to feel. And for most people, when they start to meditate on the heart, that's kind of what they feel, is just this numbness or this blocked, painful feeling. And for God knows how many years, I've sat and meditated on those painful feelings. But the change in me is now to look for the warmth and look for the openness and look for the softness. And so this practice of meditating on the warm softness in your heart and letting, the blocked or painful or the hard feelings, just let them be dissolved in the warm softness. So my kind of invitation for everyone listening was that in that week, the 9th to the 14th of December, was that we all, as a Transits Team collective, could start to meditate on the warmth in our heart and see if doing that and will connect us to this soft, comforting feeling in us. And that was kind of all I wanted to say on it, because I didn't want to present what, like we've just been saying, if you're looking for something specific to happen, you might miss what actually does happen. I'd be just interested to see what happens if we just do that, because I have my experience of it in the past, and I'm sure my experience of it in the future will be different. But if we can just bear that in mind, and like you were saying about being, in the supermarket queue, or waiting for the kettle to boil, or in the shower, it doesn't need to be a big deal. It's just an intentional returning.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's so cool. And, it's one of those things, and I'm sure I've spoken about it on the podcast. I have this thing that I do, and it's I call it being in me. And all I do is I'm lying in bed of a night and I've got a hand on my heart. And, when I started diving into all the heart math stuff, I'm like, I knew it, because it was this feeling that I just get. I love what you said, the warmth. When we describe it, it sounds like so insignificant for how it feels. And it's why every meditation that I lead, I'm like, hand on your heart in any way that feels comfortable, because the science is in, people. This is how we connect to our heart. It's how we hear the wisdom of it. And I love it. And I love what you said. Let's not have any preconceived ideas. Let's not, because I would often in the past be like, what do you mean people have all these amazing adventures when they meditate and they go to all these places and they have all these experiences? I don't have that. So I really was in my own way until I realized that ever since I was tiny, without even realizing, I will lie in bed with a hand on my heart and a hand on my sacral and just feel the energy of those centers, which I think is just hilarious, given that I have, my design as well. It's pretty much my design that I'm connecting with as well, my consistent energy. And this subtle energy for me is it really is heaven on earth. I feel like it's access to everything. So I love that. So between the 9th and the 14th, people, let's just practice and let's see what happens, and make sure you connect with us on socials and let us know. I love it. We should do a group meditation sometime. We should do that.
Yeah. Because the reason I've chosen this warm heart meditation is because gate 26 and gate 45, right? Gate 26 in the heart, gate 45 pointing at the heart. It's all about the heart for that week.
Yeah. Love it.
Following on from our week of heart meditations as an experiment, the 15th to the 19th, the sun is in gate 11 and the earth in gate 12, which are the cities of light and purity. So the reality, I think, for most of us, or a lot of us, is that we don't necessarily feel light and pure all the time. But I think we often have this sense of a darkness and maybe a guilt in us that we might be a bit ashamed of or wish wasn't there. I think that, hopefully we get to a place where we do start to feel more light and pure. But I think initially there's this feeling of I do not feel those things. But again, the teachings of all the spiritual traditions are that these aspects of light and purity are at the heart of who we are. They're our basic nature. So this leaning into our innate goodness, gives us a platform, I find, from which we can soften and dissolve this perceived darkness, putting that in inverted commas. So if parts of you are like voicing concerns about me saying that we are inherently good, that we are inherently pure, that we are inherently loving, it may just be, the conditioning of being raised in a Western religious culture, which even if we're not necessarily overtly raised in a Western religious culture or a European-based religious culture, that idea of like original sin and this idea that we're inherently bad and we need all these kinds of commandments and rules to protect us from our deepest nature, which is inherently bad, that is even subtly there. And it wasn't until I came to the Eastern teachings, like the Buddhist and the Hindu teachings, which are the opposite. They're like, no, you're inherently good. There is your Atman in Hindu teachings, or your Buddha nature, that's kind of smothered over with a lot of confusion. You're not inherently bad. So for me, I hadn't realized this kind of doctrine that was in my worldview until I'd seen the opposite of it. And then I was like, oh, I kind of was scared that I was inherently bad, even though I'm not raised by religious parents at all. It was somehow it had got in there. So I just want to kind of name that, because, when someone says to me, you are inherently good and pure and light, and there is a deep, deep perfection in the heart of you, if I've never seen it and never had access to it, I might be like, I don't believe you. But I think the point is, what we're trying to do through these practices is to get in touch with that part of us so that we don't need to believe someone else telling us. We know because we can access it.
Yeah, I love that. And like, I really remember those days for me. I mean, I definitely have got to this point where I absolutely know that I'm inherently good, I've known that for a long time. However, the thing that I will add to this from my perspective is I did not realize how deep conditioning goes, like one of the things that, I suppose it's my 37, I love the whole idea of balance and equality and all of those things. So I never really dove really deep into, I don't love to point the finger and go, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. I'm not that sort of human. So one of the things that I realized is how deeply conditioned as a woman I still am. I'm like literally unpicking the threads of the patriarchal conditioning within me without even realizing it was there. I was raised by a mother who worked full time in a home that seemingly had great equality. My parents shared everything. Definitely dad didn't like rule the household, or he didn't get the final say. Like, it was beautiful equality. So I just always thought, no, that's not in me. Oh my God, it's so in me. And I think it goes to what you're saying, Jen, is like, we are so deeply conditioned in so many ways, especially in the Western world, that we don't even know. So it's those little things that in any place that we feel guilt or shame, or that we're not enough, and maybe we're not even aware of it. Like, there's been things that I've become aware of recently that I'm like, wow, I did not even realize that I felt shut down or responsible for everybody else's stuff or whatever it was. And I just think that it's time, like, let's all just invite ourselves in to really have a good look at that conditioning, because we are all inherently good and we all deserve to be equally of the greatest importance as the next person. And just because you might be someone like me who identifies with being someone who does treat people that way, and just, maybe even assumes that, as long as I just keep behaving this way, it's going to be okay, that we actually have to dig deeper and go, wow, I need to set myself free from this. I need to acknowledge that there's pain within me that I didn't even know was there, and probably isn't even mine. Like you were saying a couple of episodes ago, like it belongs to my lineage, not to me, but there is a part of me that needs to heal that. So, and believe that I'm inherently as valuable as the next person. So, yeah.
I mean, in terms of last month in Jenny's Feminism Book Club, I recommended Eve, which is about the history of the female human body. This month, I am listening to The Woman Who Would Not Be Silenced, which is a factual historical account of a woman in the 1860s in America who was put in an insane asylum by her husband, who obviously she was legally his possession and he could do whatever he wanted with her, for voicing a slightly different interpretation of religious doctrine to him. And her legal battles, and this is all from her diaries. She kept meticulous diaries, the diaries of everyone involved, like all the notes from the court. Like it's incredible that, because the author's done a really good job of showing what the dominant worldview was at that time of what a woman was, what a healthy, sane woman was, which was basically meek, polite, deferential, all of that. And then any woman that stepped outside of that accepted societal model of what a woman was allowed to be was labeled insane and put in an asylum,
Yeah. It's so funny. The book I'm reading at the moment references her and references the story. Yeah. And I'm just like, and the Clementine Ford, who's the author of the book I'm reading at the moment, she even talks about, like, this was a way that men could divorce their wives. They just put them in an asylum. And like, because they were mad because they didn't want to be married anymore. Like, what the fuck? Like, bullshit. So yeah, I really feel like there's so much of this going on, and so much that, although, like, my experience of this is, although I perceive that I wasn't born into a family that represents that, I just assumed that it kind of wasn't as affecting. It wasn't affecting me as much. And the more I kind of open my eyes to it, the more I go, oh, yeah, it's definitely playing out. Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. Eve's the next book on my list. I really want to read it. And, again, it's that whole, the female body, that they don't even freaking do research for women because we're so inconsistent. No, we're perfect just as we are. So fucking work it out, people. Work it out.
Come on, science. I think you can work your way around a menstrual cycle and some changing hormones. It's not that difficult.
Yeah, exactly. I thought you guys thought you were awesome. Like, I'm pretty confident you can work this shit out.
Yeah. So we've kind of digressed, but the point about light and purity is, if we don't believe that we have light and purity as our essence, it's maybe because we have a lot of conditioning telling us the opposite,
Yeah. And that's all it is, conditioning.
That's all it is. That's all it is. Yeah. Then from the 20th to the 25th of December, we are in solstice energy, which means we're in G center energy, and we're in the cross of the vessel of love in gates 10 for the sun and gate 15 for the earth. So the cities of these gates are being and fluorescence. Being, I think we can get to grips with, the natural being state of any of us when we're not trying too hard, simply existing in our own magnificence. But fluorescence is an interesting word, literally meaning to flower. From the Gene Keys, I'm quoting, fluorescence is experienced when awareness finally comes to rest, because only when awareness stops seeking itself can it truly rest. When it does come to rest, consciousness, which was within it all along, finally shines through. That's kind of what I was alluding to earlier when I sort of said, I spend a lot of time trying to get to a point of rest, because then awareness experiences its own nature as consciousness. It has to stop looking for itself. And when you think about looking, and then you meditate on looking and seeking, you can see how deep it is in our nature to seek. We're constantly looking externally, in other people, to the world around us, to teachings, to guided meditations. We're constantly seeking. When you actually consider what exactly is seeking what, and then what Richard's saying there is, only when awareness stops seeking itself can it truly rest. And you're like, oh yeah, that is actually what's happening. Awareness is looking for itself.
Yeah. I love this so much, because it's the chicken or the egg, it's this energy of, like, what came first. And something I'm seeing a lot in HDX and in the mastermind at the moment is, and in my life, is this real noticing. Like, this is the word that I think is so powerful. Like, instead of saying I did this or I'm doing that, it's like I noticed, and I'm seeing all of these people and I'm witnessing it in myself at the next level of the witness, the witness, like noticing the trauma behavior or the trauma response, noticing the inner child pattern, noticing whatever the behavior is, and seeing it play out, like literally at the same time as living it and feeling it and experiencing it, being really aware that that's not you. Like, it's crazy. And like, it's definitely an experience that I'm going through, and just seeing it in the mastermind as well. Like, yeah, like I'm feeling all these things that I know it's just my conditioning. It's just my pattern. And I feel like that's like a precursor to what you're talking about, that awareness of, it always makes me think of that quote, you are not your thoughts. It's that awareness of, oh my goodness, I'm the witness. Like, this is playing out within me. Like, it's true and it needs to happen. And at the same time, it's not me, and it's just this weird program thing that's playing out. I just love it. I just geek out on it.
Well, I mean, it's passenger consciousness, right? I mean, this is what Ra was saying. He's like, you follow this. Here are some guidelines, guys. Here's an experiment. Here's some information. Have at it. See what happens. And we all get to this point where we're like, hiya, passenger consciousness, witnessing a program. I can see that. Yeah, I see it.
It's so good. It's so freeing, like, it's when you really start to see that, and it goes back to this heart piece, that you are not your behavior. You are the being that is witnessing the behavior. I just love it.
Yeah. And Ra, there's a quote, a video that I can kind of see in my head while I'm thinking about it, of Ra talking about passenger consciousness. And he was like, he was like going, this is a moving train. And he was pointing at his own body. Like, he was going, this is a moving train that you've been plonked into. And I think what he's referring to when he says it's a moving train, he's saying this is a bundle of conditioning already in train. It's already got momentum behind it. It's already got its own, like, it's playing out. And so I think what we're starting to see with all these patterns, like, that's what he meant when he said it's a moving train. He's like, it's a bundle of patterns that's playing itself out, that's historical. It's been going for God, don't know where the track begins, way back, and it's heading in that direction. And we're just conscious on the train of playing out conditioning patterns.
Yeah. And it's so powerful. One of the girls in my group, she was like, oh my God, I just saw my 36 play out. And I watched as this behavior happened. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, wow, that's just my 36. And to watch the detachment happen, like before my eyes, as she's telling me this story, that is just, oh my God, it's just so powerful. And I think this is why human design is so incredibly important, because it gives us that tangible thing that, although, we want to be these great spiritual beings, we are also three-dimensional human beings. So we need the tangible thing that helps us detach from the behavior. And just watching this penny drop, like, oh, and I know it's definitely been a big journey for me with human design and the gene keys, like just watching it, and also knowing that, like you say, like it's kind of like something that's happening, but it's not me. And when you have that awareness, then all of a sudden the fear expression or the shadow or whatever you want to call it diminishes, because the fear that this is me and I am that starts to disappear, because it's not. It's just this energy that lies within. And as I said to this incredible, awesome human in my group, it's like, now you have a choice. Now you're sitting there with a choice of, well, what else sits in the 36? Like, as you're healing this and going through this process and you brought awareness to it, now what? What's the potential that lies in there? And she's like, humanity and compassion, baby. And it gives you the opportunity to then lean into these higher potentials, which is, what you're talking about today with the acidic states, Jen.
Yeah, I mean, it's so powerful. I don't doubt this system. No. You and I both have been working in this system for a number of years, and we keep getting these verifiable results that this system has a capacity to unlock something in our awareness that gives us a more fruitful and realistic experience of life that we feel more peaceful in, more aware of, more not in control of, but like that sense of being out of control that I certainly felt before I came to human design. Yeah.
It's a surrender. It's like,
yeah.
For me, it really is like, wow, this is all within me. My choice is how I express these energies, you know? And simultaneously at the same time, it's to just let the fuck go, just let go and you know, be here and be this human and surrender to it. I just love it.
So closing off the year would be from the 26th to the 30th of December with the sun in gate 58 and the earth in gate 52. Apart from my own personality, Sun Earth, which I love dearly, these two are my favourite pairing. They're both in the root, the cities of bliss and stillness. And we come to these via the gifts of vitality and restraint, which again, you can see at the gift level, there's a very clear polarity, vitality and restraint. What I think he's referring to there is restraining our vitality from the shadows of stress and dissatisfaction, which drive most of our compulsive and unnecessary activities. So the journey in this case to the cities through the shadows and the gifts is a journey inward to the present moment, not a journey outward to some future time. To get to bliss and stillness, which if most of us are honest, we're like, I would like to get to bliss. Like, I'll take some bliss, please. Is anyone got any? Is the bliss on the menu? I'll have some of that, thanks.
Yeah.
And that kind of that does drive a lot of our behavior. It's, you know, it's the fuel for the stream of taste and judgment, and it's that logical step-by-step process of, oh, that felt good, I'll do that again, or that didn't feel quite good, I'm going to change it in a little way to get that to feel better. And I feel like part of that process of that stream is to get closer to feeling bliss, and then to have a collective experience of bliss, as in, everything is perfect now. You know, I think that's part of the experience of bliss through that channel, which is, okay, guys, we nailed it. We perfected everything. It's bliss.
Yeah. I love it.
So
it also makes me think of contentment, you know, like I love the word contentment because I think sometimes we underestimate it, but it's just that peaceful, beautiful, can things get better than this? I love that.
Yeah. And the thing with the channel that the 58 fuels, it's got the keynote is the design of insatiability. So you can get totally carried away with itself where nothing's ever good enough, and therefore it never experiences the bliss, which is why we need gate 52 as its anchor to say, no, the bliss is in the stillness. Actually, it's not in the incessant activity. It's there. It's right there. And on the few occasions where my meditation has got actually stable enough for that bliss to bubble up inside me, they call it in Pali, the language of the Buddha, piti and sukha. So when ease and bliss bubbles up from inside you because you're so still, you just start laughing because you're like, oh my God, I've been searching for this feeling my whole life. And all I had to do was sit still for long enough to let it just emerge from me naturally because it's part of my nature. I mean, what a joke.
But don't you just think that what you just said, that is life? Right there. Yes. If we want to live our most expanded life, it's that. It's stop fucking with it. And just be there. Just be with it, you know? Yeah.
So that will take us to the end of the year. I won't go into 31 and onto the first because we'll maybe do that in the next one. But that's the Sun Earth. Now, we then need to talk about Mercury retrograde because everything I've just talked about in relation to the Sun is also relevant to Mercury. Mercury transited all of those sun gates that I've just talked about from the 13th of November. And it's now starting to slow down in them as we enter into December. When we get to the 12th of December, Mercury will be in gate 58, vitality, joy, city of bliss. And then it will retrograde from the 12th of December back through gate 58, 10, 11, briefly into 26 on New Year's Eve, where it will then station direct on the 2nd of Jan and return back through those gates. I think it's the end of January when it'll get out of its post-retrograde shadow. So we've got like mid-December through to sort of early January in retrograde and then shadow either side. And when we say shadow, it just means that Mercury's starting to slow down. So when you look at a human design ephemeris, Mercury moves through a gate in about 3 days. But as you get into the pre and post retrograde shadows, it's 4 days, then 5 days, then 6 days. So we can see it slowing down. So we can consider, if we like, okay, how am I going to work with Mercury retrograde this December? We can consider the following. Gate 58. How can we move out of our own feeling of dissatisfaction with life and reconnect to our innate vitality? How can we allow ourselves to let life flow through us as a spontaneous expression of bliss without our mind getting involved and interfering with that joy? That is the question that we're all getting the opportunity to really reflect on in December while Mercury goes into its retrograde.
I love it. I already have, like, one of the things for me is like, stop working so much. Okay, make space, have more fun, lighten up.
Yeah. It's like the gate, there is also there's a G center gate following that, the gate 10. And so we then also get to reflect on, how do I describe this? Like the tendency of our wounded sense of self to become, narcissistic or self-denying or self-obsessed, but then to just let yourself into that naturalness of gate 10, which is the gate of the behavior of the self, which it's actually about loving who you are and what you feel like just now. It's not about perfecting a behavior so that you can be lovable or any of that. It's just you start to transcend this story of how we behave and who we are as a personality and as a self and identity, and we just end up in this beingness, like no life story, no self-obsession, personhood or whatever. It's just, I'm just a being, same as you, just a being. You're a being, right? Yeah, we're beings. Like that's it when it comes to the 10.
Yeah, I love it. Bring that on.
And then when we get into the 11, we're looking at this insight into how the mind makes up stuff to fill in the gaps of our perceptual abilities. Everyone, I'm pretty sure, listening to this is a meditator, like sits down quietly at some point in their day, and you will see that 99.9% of what the mind comes up with is it's just noise to try and distract you from what you're actually feeling. And so part of the gate 11 is to get away from this need to follow every creative avenue that the mind is trying to drag you down and just get to the essence of the lightness of your being,
Yeah, I love that. And I also feel like the timing, of the year where we could all be really caught up in all the shoulds, and it's almost really counterintuitive, well, I have to do this and I have to do that, and I've got to organize Christmas, and I've got to finish up my work, and I've got to connect with all these people, and I've got to actually, what if you didn't? It's that perfect time of year to just go, what if you just grabbed a cup of tea and sat in the sun and just saw what happens, like that's what I'm going to be doing.
We will be sitting in the rain, but good. Yeah, same message.
Yeah, I'll be sitting in the sun. I'll be lying on the beach. I will be doing all the joyous summer things. Thank goodness.
So yeah, summary for the whole of December with this Sun Earth thing and the retrograde of Mercury is starting to lean into the possibility of our goodness and not being so willing to believe that naysaying, negative, I'm broken, I'm wrong, I'm like, oh, I'm not good, all of that, and allowing ourselves to be peaceful and contented and blissful, like actually letting that be an option for who you are and how you show up, without believing the mind that says, well, that's all right for you, Jenny, but I'm not like that. Like, I have that voice too that says I'm not those things, but I have come to understand that I don't have to believe that voice, because it might not be true. And I'm going to open myself to the possibility that I could be a deeply peaceful, loving, compassionate being.
Yeah.
What if?
We are not our thoughts. We are not our thoughts, that's why I love what you were saying earlier. Like when we connect into our heart, that's the depth of who we are. And yeah, it's time to let go. Let go of that part of you that's so attached to the fear, the not
Mm.
enoughness, the insecurity, the shame, the guilt, the all the things. And it's not to say that those things don't show up. I know they still show up for me. However, it's definitely from a different place. It's like what I was saying earlier. It's from this witness point of view, like, oh, you're here. What are you here to teach me? What can I learn from this? Is there something that needs to be healed? As opposed to hearing this in the first person that I am, like you said, like I am broken, I am wrong, I am blah, blah, blah. No, you're not.
Mm.
You're absolutely beautiful and whole and loving and perfect just as you are. They're just things and lessons that are here to embody even more of that love.
Mm. So that is the personal planets and their influence on us as individuals. Meanwhile, out in the world, out in the outer planets, which are kind of dealing with the bigger themes planet-wide, just a quick summary. Saturn is still direct in gate 55, gate of the spirit. Pluto is direct in gate 60 currently, acceptance of limitations. Uranus is going to remain retrograde in gate 23, the gate of assimilation, all of which I've talked about over the past few months on the podcast. Neptune has been retrograde since the 1st of July, and it's going to station direct on the 6th of December in gate 36, line 3. So as part of what Neptune has been veiling and unveiling as part of its journey through 36, Neptune is this illusion and veil that kind of, it's deep water. It hides things under the deep water, and it's also deep emotion in the gate 36 of emotional crisis. So that sense of emotional turbulence that is part of our shared experience of being human is understanding that we, even though those crises may not be directly affecting our lives, we go through them together as a humanity. There is a part of us that cannot be separated from that. These crises test our ability to trust that the darkest darkness comes just before the light returns. And so from that understanding of our shared experience, we have compassion that it is hard to be human sometimes, So that's Neptune.
Jupiter, I feel like that's just really, I just wanted to jump in because I feel like that's really, really poignant for what's going on in the world right now. I feel like so many people are just hearts open and devastated. Like we're really feeling the humanity and the emotional crisis of being human right now. And as much as everything that's happening is awful, it's also waking people up to the inhumane capacity of humans and hopefully bringing more of planet Earth online with compassion, like being compassionate and supportive instead of blaming and finger pointing, bringing us more to this wholeness, like what you do to them, you do to me. And stopping the separation and finger pointing and instead bringing us together through awful, awful experiences. So, yeah, I think that this is one of the challenges with that 36 energy is that it can be so, I don't even know what the word is, like devastating. It can be so confronting. It can be so challenging. And we also need to hold that this is about humanity and compassion, and finding those things in these deep, deep crises. So, yeah, I feel like it's very on point for what's going on in the world right now.
Yeah. And just like when you have these tools, when you have this lens of the Gene Keys and human design to look at these energies through, you get a clue about what frequency we need to hold individually. If enough of us hold a grid of deep, deep compassion, not turning away out of ignorance or not willing to see, being willing to watch and hold that even though this is dark, we trust in the goodness, we trust in the light, you know? I mean,
Exactly.
that I do a metta practice, metta meaning loving kindness meditation, every day at the end of my meditation practice. And there are some world leaders in various areas of the world that are getting as much love and compassion. And like, it's like, I want you to see the light of your own being. I want you to know the goodness of your own heart so that you stop exporting your trauma all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful.
On that theme, also, Jupiter is currently retrograding gate 27. Gate 27 is the gate of caring. It will station direct on the 31st of December on New Year's Eve in line 4 of gate 27. From a Gene Keys perspective, this is the path from selfishness to selflessness through the gift of altruism. And it's basically about a perceptual shift. A perceptual shift is what brings about that journey. It is the experience of the connection between us all. You know, it is the deep inner knowing that we are not separate and cannot be separated. And this illusion that you are different from me is at the surface of our being, and at the depths, we are all part of the same process of life. Chiron, 27 is my Chiron. So this is the hardest thing for me to do. It's my interpretation of what Chiron is in our charts. It is the thing that is our deepest wound and the thing that we most need to heal, and therefore the thing that we find most difficult. What I've learned, and I'm still learning, still in the process of learning, you know, my Chiron returns not for another few years, but it's about how hard it is to care, like how painful it is to care, how it hurts to care for someone else and how much of a risk it is. But I also understand that it hurts me more to not care, because if I just be like, I don't care about that, I just numb myself to the suffering of others, but I'm also numbing myself from my own love, capacity for love and compassion. So, and ultimately that is more painful. So if I'm not careful, I become careless. And then that's where we get into such a mess. So, you know, I'm really starting to let my heart open to the suffering, to the woundedness, to the atrocities, to stop myself from being numb. And, you know, I appreciate that the numbness is a protective mechanism, and that it's a natural protective mechanism. It's something that kind of happens automatically. And it takes a lot of regulation in a person to be willing to. So I'm not suggesting if you're feeling dysregulated that this is a good path for you right now, because, you know, you're not regulated enough to do this work. But for those of us that do feel regulated at the moment, for me anyway, this Jupiter in gate 27, you know, there's so much abundance that comes with Jupiter. It's our capacity to understand that it's not about us and them. It's not about them doing that to those people. It's about us. We are not separate from the hurters and the hurt, you know? So Chiron will start this return in gate 27 in May 2027. So at the moment, Chiron is in gate 51, which I know is your Chiron, Emma. So, you know, there's that going on. But for those of
far out, feeling it right now. Just saying.
Yeah? Feeling the shock?
Oh yeah, baby. Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm just giving you all a heads up on my Chiron, so that come May 2027, you're like, oh, here it is. How much are we able to care? So this is why, you know, this is the whole theme of this podcast. This is why it's so important to know and have a internal pathway and access to the love that is at the heart of our own being, because otherwise we do have to kind of numb ourselves out to pain and suffering and not let ourselves care deeply. So that it's deeply altruistic to be willing to feel what you feel and what we collectively feel. You know, earlier on we're talking about this mass of inherited karma that we have. Sorry, I use the word karma because it's kind of the language I use, but this massive like historical trauma that we have inherited. But then there's also all the new stuff that's being created constantly. So it's just to say it's really hard to be a deeply sensitive feeling human, but the other option is to be utterly numb and to stop feeling. So my encouragement is for those who are listening and feel like they have the capacity to just let yourself have deep compassion for the challenge that humanity not just now is facing, but has always faced, the inherent challenge of being a human being on this plane, and to get access to that part of yourself. And I mean that in a literal way, like Emma was saying about, the kind of, the busyness or the chaos of this kind of part of the season. If we can just make space, like part of my practice is every morning I have a practice that I use to connect me to that part of myself. I'm suggesting it's this meditating on the warmth of your heart, but whatever practice it is that works for you, so that the first thing you do in the day is get access to the deeply loving, open, compassionate part of yourself, so that's how you enter your day, and that there's a conscious pathway to that for the rest of the day.
I love that. And you know what? You've just reminded me, I posted last night one of my many favorite scenes from Ted Lasso. So if anyone is out there who has not watched Ted Lasso, watch freaking Ted Lasso. Oh my God, Jen.
I know.
It's
okay,
so
that's
good.
Homework for the week.
These characters are so good. Anyway, and in this particular scene, one of my leading Emma principles is be curious, not judgmental. And in this scene, he actually talks about exactly that: be curious, not judgmental. And I feel like that's really a really big theme right now: be curious, not judgmental. Because I know there's so many people out there that have good intentions, and they're trying to do the best thing by everyone. However, as long as we're focused on separation, we're not serving the whole. So the thing I just want to say, no matter what is going on in your life, or, now we're talking about the outer planets in the world, just be curious, not judgmental. Just try to get to the bottom of, who's doing what, because why would they do that, instead of being quick to say, well, that's right or wrong. And I mean, let me be clear, there's a lot of not good stuff going on, and that it shouldn't be happening. And I'm at no point condoning it. But what I am saying is just be curious. Get into, even if it's the person at the cafe that gives you the shits, like, what specifically, why would they be behaving that way? That story I've told a million times on the podcast about the guy on the tube, and his two kids are running around, and the kids are irritating everybody, and the dad's not doing anything, and everyone on the tube's getting really annoyed, until finally some person says to the guy, oh, like, what's with your kids? Like, you need to do something about your kids. And he's like, yeah, I know, but it's so beautiful to see them happy because we've just coming back from their mother's funeral. Like, being curious instead of judgmental is so freaking important, because you just, we can create so much change and so much more love and peace and harmony in the world from curiosity than we ever can from judgment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's very easy to get hypnotized by thinking the worst of people. And this world right now needs people to look for the light in themselves, in each other, and be, to be slightly, I don't know what with my language, we need kind of light warriors. We need people here that are just determined to maintain that frequency of possibility, hope, trust, that we can get there, that we can love in the face of it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That metaphor, another metaphor I've told so many times on the podcast, of when we were walking the Camino and we had that big day where we had to climb a mountain, and the mountain just didn't come until we realized we were already 2/3 of the way up the mountain. I feel like we are, as a planet, that's where we're at. Like, we think we haven't even reached the mountain yet, and actually we're already a really good distance up the mountain. We just have to keep going. We have to keep holding this the possibility, this higher frequency, the belief of this new world that we're creating, and focus on creating the new world, not getting stuck in this liminal in-between space where things have to die and fall away. Don't get caught up in the death. Focus on the new life.
Mm-hmm. Amen. I've been reading a book of blessings by the Irish poet John O'Donoghue, and I'm just obsessed with blessings. Like, there is a tradition of blessings that we kind of have lost somewhere along the way. May you be this, may you be that, this kind of tradition. So to thank you all for listening, for being with us this year, and wishing you well for what's to come, I want to share this blessing with you all. You know, I like to end with a poem.
I love it. It's so good. And you know what's really crazy is that as soon as you said John O'Donoghue, did you say? I instantly was taken back to the Camino in 2018 when I heard someone talking all about his work. And it could have been, is he still alive? It could have even been an interview with him on the podcast On Being. Like, how do I even remember this? This is crazy. So clearly I'm going to go and look him up and dive in, because the universe is bringing me back to a very specific memory. So over to you, beautiful.
I don't think he's still with us. But I also have listened to, On Being, love a bit of John O'Donoghue. So I think that's where I found him in the first place. Okay, a blessing. On the day when the weight deadens on your shoulders and you stumble, may the clay dance to balance you. And when your eyes freeze behind the grey window and the ghost of loss gets into you, may a flock of colours, indigo, red, green and azure blue, come to awaken in you a meadow of delight. When the canvas frays in the currach of thought and a stain of ocean blackens beneath you, may there come across the waters a path of yellow moonlight to bring you safely home. May the nourishment of the earth be yours. May the clarity of light be yours. May the fluency of the ocean be yours. May the protection of the ancestors be yours. And so, may a slow wind work these words of love around you, an invisible cloak to mind your life.
So beautiful. Oh my goodness, I love it so much. Even though the internet was just breaking up momentarily, I think I got it all. So thank you everybody for being here. Jen, thank you for another just incredible year. We've had such an adventure this year. So huge thank you to everyone. I know we're not at the end yet, but given that this is our December transits, I think it's just important just to check in, say thank you, give so much gratitude. What a freaking crazy, crazy year it's been. And I'm super excited to round it out. And this is the kind of the beginning of it, because here on the podcast, we're going to do some fun stuff as we do every year. I'm going to do a podcast, which is almost like it being in a class in HDX. I'm going to take you through 2023 in review, and then I'm going to help you look at 2024 and set some dreams in motion for then. But until then, Jen, thank you so much. What a great adventure we've had this year.
Don't we always? It's been a pleasure, love.
Thank you, everybody, so much for being with us. And I am super excited to get into the silly season. I'm excited to lie on the beach and do nothing. And it's just around the corner. So thanks, everyone. I trust you got what you needed from today's episode. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now. Thanks, everyone, for being here all the way to the end of the podcast. I hope you got lots of value out of it. I certainly had a lot of fun doing it. Could I please ask that you share this podcast with friends if you found it valuable? And also, bonus points, could you leave a review for me as well on Apple? It would be greatly appreciated. If at any point you would like to be on the podcast, or you've got questions that you'd like me to discuss on the podcast, by all means get on my socials and DM me. Everything you need is there in the show notes. Have an awesome day. Bye for now.